Welcome back, everybody. We are coming into week four, going over waiver wire players you need to pick up right here on Bleacher Report. You're with your host, Justin Henry, and for Bob Parmar. P, bro, it's week four, and we had a crazy week three full of some performances we weren't expecting, also some injuries we weren't expecting, man. It's a lot of people panicking right now, 1-2, 0-3 with their fantasy teams.
Yeah, a lot of people panicking. I don't think it's quite time to panic right now. We're still waiting on some people to start performing like their draft spot, like in the spot that we drafted them and whatnot. But yeah, we had some breakout performances as well. So we seen Cam Scatabo start to really look up. So that's definitely good. But yeah, we got you guys.
I mean, we got changes at quarterback. Like we saw Jake Browning and Carson Wentz go at it. We just got news today that Jackson Dart's going to be taking over as a starter for the New York Giants coming into week four. We've also had injuries at the receiver and running back position. So there's a lot here to be managed because even expectations haven't been met for a lot of players this year in fantasy. And so I think that there's some talent out there this week that I think's available to be helpful, but also we got buys coming up here right after week four.
Hmm.
So there's going to also be a need to fill spots that might be a little bit thin. So I'm going to start off with the running back here. And obviously, one of the top stories coming out of Sunday was James Conner's injury, dealing with the foot injury. And, you hate to see a player like James Conner, who's already dealt with so much adversity in his career, go through the kind of injuries he's gone through and also other things that he's gone through. But he's undergoing ankle surgery and out indefinitely, according to Ian Rappaport. And, you know, obviously, we've all talked about Trey Benson, you and I, a lot of the fantasy community, the dynasty community. You don't want it to go this way. You want it to be where, hey, the rookie earns more touches. But in the case that it does happen, to me, this is a rip and replace. Like what James Conner was for the Cardinals, I think we might get a little bit more explosive version of that out of Trey Benson. Now, we didn't get to see the whole story here. He only had 10 carries, but you see their involvement in the receiving game, especially for those in PPR leagues. And we know this offense does have a run-centric feel to it. That's how they prefer to get things going with Kyler Murray's legs, with the running back's legs. And, I think Trey Benson has all the talent in the world. This isn't one of those players that is just a back end, RB2, RB3 type player. I think this is an immediate impact player for the Arizona Cardinals and somebody, especially with James Conner out for the year, that you can stick in as your RB2.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely hate to see the way that James Conner went out. He's had a hell of a career. He's up there. I believe he's like 30 right now. So we're not sure what that looks like. But just like you said, Trey Benson, explosive. He was a high draft pick that the Arizona Cardinals spent on him and invested in him. I believe he was like a 4.3 40. So definitely explosive. We know that they use their running backs a ton, not only running the rock, but also in the passing game. So when we're looking at Trey Benson, Jay, tell me how much, or if he's out there in your waiver wire now, 50% owned, how much are you looking, how much five bucks are you looking to drop on him?
I think it really depends, right? If I was the James Conner, manager and I had him, I'd probably be looking at like a 30 to 40% spend if depending on how your league is, right? Some leagues are a little bit more aggressive. I think a 30, 40% spend is probably the midline because you're getting a rock solid RB2. So I kind of think that like Travis Etienne range, that maybe that Alvin Kamara range, Chuba Hubbard range, like you start to DeAndre Swift range, that's the kind of impact that I think Trey Benson can have early on and perhaps even more. So I think if you needed James Conner, do it. If you didn't need a running back, this is still a player I would try to get though, because to have a strong RB3 or RB4 is essential to your fantasy team. So you can't always do it because there's injuries that happen, but a lot of times, a player that was drafted may have been dropped early on in week one or week two because of other needs. So I think Trey Benson is a player I for sure will be wanting to spend a good amount of fab on. I wouldn't go 100% or 75% of the budget, but I would go heavy bidding on Trey Benson.
Yeah,
What about you, Pete? Because James Conner wasn't the only injury, unless you got a thought on Trey Benson there.
yeah. I mean, look, I think that although, we pay homage to James Conner, every year there's going to be a big splash that you can grab out for free agency. And if he's out there, I think that Trey Benson is that. So you're saying 30 to 40, I'm thinking 40 to 50 because this is what you have this is what you save your fab for, right? So, I'm right there, but along the line with injuries, just going into my next pick, we've seen Mike Evans go out in injury as well. And we all love Mike Evans. He's been doing it for a long time. It's that same hammy. It seems like for the past 7 consecutive years, he's had that hamstring injury. He's expected to miss, I think, around 2 to 3 weeks. So in that case, the person I'm looking at is Sterling Shepard, right? So we seen him last week, 5 targets, 4 catches, 80 yards. And, he does provide a safe floor for those of you who are missing Mike Evans and for those of you guys who are missing for those of you guys who are missing CD Lamb as well, right? He is somebody who can go out
Good
there,
point.
steps into that number 2 role there because Emeka Ibuka is doing a really great job as a rookie. He's probably going to step into that number 1 role. I'd anticipate that, he's averaged 5 targets in the number 3 role right now. I'd anticipate him to get around 8 to 9 targets a game. So I do see a really safe floor for Sterling Shepard. There are, questions of if Godwin's going to come back this week as well. I still would not let that stop me from grabbing Sterling because they're going to have to work Godwin back in. We've seen a devastating injury from Godwin end of late last season. He still got to get up in game shape. He still got to do what he does. So I still see a safe floor for Shepard. And another person in this offense that you might want to keep an eye out for, who showed it out last week or last year during injuries, is actually Kate Otten as well.
Yeah, good point there. And this offense, Baker does pass the rock around. Like that's one thing he's going to continue to do, no matter who's on the field. We saw it with Jalen McMillan last year. We've seen it with Trey Palmer in the past. We talked about Cade Otton, Rashad White. So the volume will be there. And I think Sterling Shepard, the only concern I have is that he's probably not a touchdown guy. I think of him as
Hmm.
like a Wan'Dale Robinson and somebody that you could put in your flex spot, potentially has some wide receiver 3 upside on a weekly basis in PPR leagues. So obviously a couple major injuries though. But let's talk about it because you mentioned it, Pete. The chat also mentioned it. I have Lamb and Evans out now and Mixon on IR. Should I drop Mixon? And you know what? This is a very hard question because I think CeeDee Lamb, we know he's going to come back in 2 to 3 weeks. Maybe sooner. I know he's trying to get on the field, but probably a 2 to 3 week thing. Mike Evans, a 2 to 3 week thing with his hamstring, chances are it could be somewhere around there. Mixon, I think the one area we have to look at for him is week 6 because it's been 4 weeks. They said is he's on IR. They're going to reevaluate him, and then week 5 the team plays. Week 6 they have a bye. So I think the earliest we see Joe Mixon is week 7. That's a tough decision to make because I think if you're 3-0 right now, maybe you hold on to Mixon and you can eat that spot, But if you're 0-3, 1-2, or maybe you're a fringe type of 2-1 team, it might be time to just let Mixon go, or maybe talk to your 3-0 team and see if they're interested in trading for him as well. So get creative with Mixon. You don't have to just flat out drop him, but I think as far as looking for, potential trade partners or considering your record, that's what I would do with Mixon more so than just flat out dropping him just because one of us says so.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's you definitely want to explore trade options, but there really is no telling when Mixon's going to come back. We're seeing like an uptick in Woody Marks as well, the rookie that they were pretty high on over
Yeah.
there. So, don't want to drop him, but this is the time where you're going to have to start making some tough roster decisions. And if it comes to it, you got to do what you got to do.
Fantasy football is a game. If you're winning, a lot of times you got to stick to the winning script. If you're losing, it's time to change something and get yourself some wins.
Hmm.
D Tom asks, pick up Christian Kirk, drop Golden or Romeo Dobbs. Ooh, I know one. Pig, I'm gonna send that one to you because I know my answer already.
Yeah, I wouldn't pick up Christian Kirk. I don't think Christian Kirk is going to be, I would rather have Golden. But if you're going to drop somebody, I would drop Dobbs. That's just me personally. I would prefer Golden. I think Golden has a higher upside than all 3 of those players that you mentioned. But Christian Kirk, I don't see consistency there. They're going to make it an effort to get their other wide receivers involved. They invested a high draft pick in that wide receiver position. And, Brian Thomas Jr., they're going to look to get him going. We see Bretton Strange having an uptick. So what really is a ceiling that you're going to see for Christian Kirk?
Well,
Like
Christian Kirk,
realistically.
you mean with Nico, right? Because obviously Nico and Dalton Schultz.
Oh,
I know
oh
some,
yeah.
yeah, I know how I go.
That was
But
that.
with
Yeah, my
yeah,
bad.
with Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz, but it's like Christian Kirk has the floor. He just came back from the injury. It's just one of those things where what upside does Christian Kirk really have, right? Like
Hmm.
obviously Jaden Higgins hasn't got it going yet. We haven't seen much out of Jalen Noel. I think Christian Kirk is one of those fringe type flex plays, like just one of those players you don't always want to have. Whereas I think Golden has that upside later on down the year. And you talked about Romeo Dobbs. He's a tough start on a weekly basis as well. Plug Talk came in and said, should I drop Hall for Benson? I'm not dropping Brees Hall. There's no way I'm dropping Brees Hall. So find somebody else on your bench to drop besides Brees Hall. And also, is it is you spoke? Are we doing Scatterboo
Oof.
right now for ETN? Is that where we're at right now?
I don't know. I don't know. It seems like you got a lot of good running backs there and a lot of good options. I mean, if Scattaboo is out there, I would definitely consider picking him up, but I definitely wouldn't drop Hall and I don't know if I'd drop ETN for Scattaboo either. Just being transparent.
Yeah.
What
Hopefully
other
that's an
options do you
18
got?
league. Yeah, hopefully
Yeah.
that's an 18 league and your lineups are full. But like that also means you may not need a Cam Scatterboo. You might just want to hold on to Brees Hall and Travis Etienne.
Yeah.
Let's get on this list a little bit more, P, because I think that there's some interesting players on this list. Now, you guys have already brought some good names up, Cam Scatterbo, Trey Benson, but let's get to some names that maybe aren't owned as much in some of your deeper leagues. And this player, man, it went crazy over the weekend. Trey Tucker, and we've seen him in this spot before. This isn't typically a player, P, that I would like recommend, right? Like, but it seems like he has a role with Geno in this offense. And we saw Geno with Seattle last year. He would try JSN downfield. He's had a Tyler Lockett. And it seems like Trey Tucker, who's had 4 touchdowns now in the first 3 games, has kind of been a safety valve for Geno Smith. In the games where Geno's played well, Trey Tucker has played well. Now, I'm not sure that he will consistently be an option for your team, like a consistent wide receiver 2 or a consistent wide receiver 3. But he does flash upside. And I think over the bye weeks, especially if you're lost, a CeeDee Lamb or you lost to Mike Evans, this is a player that you can put into the flex spot. You could put into your wide receiver 3 role and give you some upsides. Also going up against a banged up Chicago Bears secondary. So I like Trey Tucker as a pickup this week. Like I said, he's typically not a player that I would vouch to start and vouch to pick up. But with things kind of being a little bit more dire in fantasy land right now, he is a glimmer of hope and a player I think has a lot of weekly upside.
Yeah. I was very surprised when he got 8 receptions. That's huge. I mean, definitely had a huge game. He just gives me, I get it. I know why you're kind of hesitant on bringing him up and whatnot, what have you, but he just kind of gives me the flash in a pan type thing. He just gives me those vibes where it's like, he had a huge game this week. Everybody's going to go rush to grab him. I probably would let somebody else spend on him because they see that big week. They have, their eyes are glistening. They may have just lost some of those 2 wide receivers that we've talked about. But me, I don't know. I don't know if
So let
I'd,
me ask you this, P. Let me
yeah.
ask you this, because the focus of defense is obviously going to be Genty, Bowers, and Jacoby Myers. Like that's the focus of defenses. And the one thing that Trey Tucker's doing is he's on the field. Like
Hmm.
everybody thought it was going to be Deontay Thornton or Jack Bech. And it's like Trey Tucker had a role last year
Yeah.
when he was playing under Antonio Pierce. They liked him. And it seems like this year he's kind of carved out a nice role for himself. I know you said there's a lot of weekly volatility with him, but like, is this a player you would just leave on waivers for somebody else, let that be their headache? Or like, hey, I at least want this guy on my team. Maybe I'll try to flip him after a good game. Like, talk to me about your thought process when you see Trey Tucker, free agents, 4 touchdowns, one of the top receivers on the board there.
Oh, it definitely sell high. It screams sell high to me, right? If I can get them for free or next to nothing, because there are some good things to look at that you pointed out. 90% snap share, right? He's a solid wide receiver number 2 on that team. I know that he is probably the 4th option at best on a weekly basis, just on that team. So definitely, if I'm able to grab him, I'm looking to sell him high. He's somebody that I don't know that I would feel confident starting him anywhere in my starting lineup. So when you grab a player like Trey Tucker, again, in my opinion, he's somebody that if you're looking to trade and you guys are talking a deal and you guys are just on that fringe, you can throw in Trey Tucker to kind of push it over the ledge.
I love it, man. And the thing is, we saw a lot of explosive receivers this week in week 3, man. You got another one for us?
I do. I got another one. Now this is a little different than Trey Tucker, right? I'm talking about Luther Bourbon, right? So Luther Burden over here got 3 targets, 3 receptions, 101 yards, and a touchdown. Right. So look, this is a Ben Johnson guy. He spent a high draft pick on him. He was drafted in the 2nd round. And you can see here they're making an effort to get him involved, take advantage of his speed. That flea flicker right there for a 65-yard touchdown. Again, this is a Ben Johnson guy. And they're getting their bearings right now as an offense. They're getting this gentleman involved. They're looking to get Colston Loveland. That's the next person, actually, I feel that they're going to create plays for and get him a little bit more involved. So really higher on him. This is somebody who you can grab right now, is floating a little under the radar, whose value may increase steadily as the season goes on, right? So he's a rookie, fast guy, and there are rumors that DJ Moore could be on the trade block. So something to kind of consider there.
I would definitely want to see that before aggressively picking up Burden. If I could get him for the low and maybe I had a deeper bench, but like I think he got a lot of that yardage on one play. So is that concerning at all, TP? Because you talked about, the run game with DeAndre Swift. You got obviously Romo Dunze in a breakout year. You have DJ Moore who's still on the team. You want to get Colson Loveland involved when Cole Kmet's still there. Do you have any concerns about workload for Luther Burden? Because I would say that's the biggest hesitation for me in picking him up. But we see like if a rookie hits like a Emeka Egbuka in Tampa, it could
Yeah.
be a boom for your team.
Yeah, so I get what you're saying, right? 3 targets, 3 receptions, most of it came on that flea flicker. The optimism that I have is the fact that he was the main choice on that flea flicker. He's drafted by Ben Johnson. We know Ben Johnson's offense from the Lions in the past. We see the Jamison Williams and how they played out with the Lions. He is their guy, right? So he's even getting some. He's even getting a few rushes on a weekly basis as well. So, guys like this in kind of what looks like right now a crowded offense with a lot of names and whatnot. I just think that it's worth a pickup, not investing a lot of fab or a high draft waiver wire pick on him. If you can get him for low, I think he can pay dividends as the season goes on, especially if you start to see them, fall under that 500,
Yeah.
500 record and kind of out of the playoffs.
Yeah, and especially like you mentioned, especially if DJ Moore gets moved, it's going to be a big uptick for Luther Burden. Let's get a
Huge.
few more questions here. Quick little rapid fire on a couple players here. Do I drop Hollywood Brown for Trey Tucker then? I think the answer for me is yes. I just don't see a path for Hollywood Brown much more. Tyquan Thornton has looked involved. We got, obviously the expected return of Xavier Worthy coming up here soon, the
Hmm.
expected return of Rashee Rice here very soon. I don't know. I think they're kind of similar players. It just feels like Trey Tucker might have a little bit more sticking power.
No, I agree with you. I lean towards Trey Tucker's upside versus Hollywood Brown's kind of like, what are we doing with Hollywood Brown when everybody
Is that
comes
even
back?
floor right now? That's like,
Yeah,
oh, is that
it's I was
what?
gonna
What is
say
that like?
like
What about Dylan
where
Sampson?
is he at?
What about your boy Luther Burden though? Would you drop Dylan Sampson for Luther Burden now that Quinshon Judkins has come back and looked the part?
Yeah, so that's a good question, right? Because Dylan Sampson, as well as Luther Burton, both, rookies, both kind of showing out. I would make that move because Quinson Juggins just looks the part, right? Comes in immediately off of virtually no offseason and is looking like the best rookie running back in these first 2 weeks, right? So I really like what they're doing. And I just wouldn't feel comfortable, like realistically, what is Dylan Sampson's upside? When are you going to be able to confidently start him? And it just unless any injuries happen, right? God forbid. But whereas I think Luther Bourbon has more upside and just in that Ben Johnson offense can really stretch the field if they utilize his speed, which they're looking like to do. So I would make that move.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm there with you, P. I get what you're saying though, because you do want to play for upside, you want to play for later on in the season. It feels like Dylan Sampson might be a little bit capped, and Luther Burden does have a lot more upside. The thing is, if Luther Burden has another 100-yard game, you're never getting him again. Dylan Sampson could probably catch 6 balls and get a touchdown, and he'd still be widely available. I think easier to acquire than Luther Burden. So
Yeah.
E-Money asks, drop Travis Hunter. And is it time to panic on some of these receivers for the Jags? This Jags offense hasn't looked apart. I don't know that I would drop Travis Hunter. I think that's a hard drop. I think a bench, especially we're only 3 weeks in. Things could change very quickly for Travis Hunter. He could figure things out. Problem is he's playing a lot of snaps, both sides of the ball. And it doesn't look like he's a priority in this offense. I mean, Diami Brown seems to have a stronger role. Parker Washington seems to have a stronger role right now than Travis Hunter. So a very tough hold. I would still hold. You on there, Peter? Or you getting rid of him?
If there's somebody else out there, I'm definitely getting rid of him. I mean, because realistically, when you think of Travis Hunter, you think of, oh, he's a number 2 pick. The reason why he was that high is because he can play both sides. That's where they seen his value. But if you think about keeping him, right? Like, do you really foresee consistency this year? I see him more as like a keep in dynasty, whereas this year it's gonna be like, oh, he's on your bench and he goes off for like 16 points because of a long catch, right? The second you put him in, three targets, a one catch, 8 yards, right? So I think that there's more, and this is kind of like a little bit more of advanced thinking. You drop him out there, and you're lower in the waiver wire. Somebody with a higher waiver wire can pick him up, and then you can let them deal with that, right? So kind of like a little, a little mind play, a little bomb you could put on somebody else's roster. So the second that he goes off, they put him in their starting lineup, and he pitches a dud. So I'll let somebody else deal with that.
Yeah, I get the logic there. It's tough. It's tough to let a player like that go. I also be sending him out in trade offers, maybe to some stronger teams, seeing how they feel about Travis Hunter, putting them in some inboxes.
Hmm.
What about defense? Pick up Denver defense and drop Packers. Packers off of a bad loss to the Browns there. I don't know. I like the Packers defense this year. I think they're bounced back, but Denver defense is solid too. Pete, which one you like?
I'm taking Packers defense. Look, the Browns are just a bad matchup. The Browns defense is also a sleeper. We're talking about these two defenses, but the Browns defense was just a really good matchup for that Packers offense, which means that that Packers defense was on the field a lot more. I'm not ready to give up on that Packers defensive ball. I think they're going to be
Uh,
top three moving forward.
yeah, I'm with you on keeping the Packers here. And the last one I'll get to real quick. Need a wide receiver. Should I trade Benson for Brian Thomas Jr.? You have Chase Brown and CMC with Henderson on the bench. So you're feeling like you could give up an extra running back. I think this is the perfect kind of deal for you. You already have three solid running backs. You go get an elite type receiver. If he bounces back in any way, you're going to smash this side of the deal and it'll be a fleece. So these are the kind of deals you make. Hot player for, struggling stud early in the season. It's not perfect, but a lot of times that spells, good things for you as far as winning fantasy championships.
Couldn't agree more.
Um, Here we go. A player that, I haven't talked at all about this, even on like J-Hand Fantasy where we produce content. It's like I haven't talked at all about Torrey Horton. Seattle Seahawks player scored 2 touchdowns, one in the kick return game. And this was one of those preseason all-stars. You're like, oh, preseason all-star, kind of one of those unsung names we hadn't heard a lot about. But he goes and returns a kick. He catches a touchdown. And it's like sometimes dudes are just playmakers. And it feels like Torrey Horton is one of those players who Cooper Kupp's ahead of him right now. JSN's ahead of him right now. But when he sees the field, things are dynamic. He makes plays happen. And I can't help but think like at some point he's going to see the field more. Cooper Kupp hasn't been, I mean, he got the bag, thankfully for him, but it feels like he's not really a big part of this offense. And if Seattle, if they're a mid-team by, middle of the season, I can see Torrey Horton have a much bigger role. Now, I know it wasn't crazy volume, but this is one of those 1 week ahead, couple weeks ahead type pickups, especially if you're in your 14, 16-man leagues. Having a player like Torrey Horton on the bench, I think this is one of those players we're going to be looking at in a couple weeks, P, and everybody's saying, pick him up, pick him up. And the people watching the show are going to be like, I already got him on my bench chilling.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think about when I'm looking at this, right? He definitely looks explosive. They drafted him, I think it was in the fifth round. But when you look at this performance from him, looks great on special teams, but 4 targets, 3 catches, 32 yards, and that touchdown, yes. But they were playing the Saints. I think they had like 30 points in the first quarter on the Saints.
Yeah.
Something crazy like that. It was nuts. So I wouldn't think too much about Cooper Kupp's role in that game. It was I don't know. I don't know if I could get with you on Torrey Holton right there. Explosive player, did some great things, albeit it's against the Saints and they were up big.
This is for those players who are like, oh, that guy's taken in my league. He's already taken it in my league. I think Torrey Horton is one of those players, if you're looking for a dart thrower, if you have an extended bench, or like I said, 14, 16 team leagues, and you need to pick up a player, Torrey Horton to me has some juice. And like I said, just one of those forecasting things. You see a player, a lot of times they pop on the screen. To me, he just seems to make plays. I don't know what it is about this kid. And I wasn't on him during the preseason like a lot of people were, but I'm starting to change my tune here. What about you, P? You got any other players that we need to get on our rosters before waivers clear tonight?
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing that you're thinking, Torrey Holton, somebody you gotta just with their situation and whatnot, what have you. I'm thinking the same thing about Ollie Gordon, right? So we've seen Ollie Gordon there was a lot of hype in the preseason, bigger back. They needed a goal line back. We've seen them actually implement that this past week. 9 rushes, 38 yards, and a touchdown that we've seen. You've seen some of these highlights here where he's has the ability to run through tacklers, unlike Devon Achan, whereas, if you get Achan out in space, he's definitely deadly. This is where this team envisions using this guy. Huge back, 230 pounds, and just a bruiser, right? So I see how he's going to be working. I see the vision that they have for him. I see him really as a safe floor play. And this team, the Miami Dolphins, really, the writing's on the wall for them, right? It looks like the coach is a candidate for being on the hot seat, probably going to get fired. Hopefully they turn things around, but it doesn't look like it. They're 0-3 and just disgruntled all around. So, he's one of those players that I would keep up if you have a bench spot, not only for bye weeks and the safe floor, because he is a touchdown or bust guy. If he gets in there, chances are that he's going to have like 10 points for you. But Devon Achan is somebody who does have an extensive injury history as well. And I just see a lot of changes coming through with this Dolphins offense. So if he's out there, you can get him for pretty cheap, and he could definitely be valuable.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of like Trey Benson. And if something happens to the starter, he steps into a very nice role on the team that's going to use him. I can see that happening with Ollie Gordon as well, especially because he gets a lot of the red zone, looks as well. So I think for me, he's not somebody we actively picking up, but I definitely see the upside, especially with how the running back landscape can get very quickly. We've seen Austin Eckler go out. We've seen the injuries are starting to pile up here early in the season at a lot of different positions. But let's get back to the chat, man, because
Yeah.
I want to get to a lot more questions here. One of them that came in is a very interesting question. Which Commanders running back is worth picking up? It's weird because we saw Chris Rodriguez lead the team in carries. We saw Bill Krosky-Merritt get the touchdown. We saw Jeremy McNichols pop off a long one. After Austin Eckler went down, everybody just assumed it was going to be Bill Krosky-Merritt just taking over this backfield. And it looks like there's going to be some form of committee here with even Mariota maybe using his legs. Like, talk to me, Pete. Which one of the running backs do you think is worth picking up? If it's
Yeah.
not Bill Krosky-Merritt, because he's probably not out there in most leagues.
Yeah, Krosky Merritt's probably not out there. Look, when you're looking at this, look, grab whichever one's cheaper because they're all going to really do the same thing. They're all really going to have a role. It seems like they run them drive for drive. So, one drive's going to be, Rodriguez, the next drive's going to be Little Bill, and they're all really going to be able to they're all
It
really
ain't Kill
going.
Bill. I thought it was Kill Bill, not Little Bill, man.
Hey, I thought it was RB1LL too. Like that's that's what everybody thought. There's a lot of
Yeah,
hype, but
yeah.
all of them are talented. And in this offense, you could it seems like in this type of offense, similar to like a Shanahan offense or a plug and play, whatever running back that you got in there is going to produce. So my answer to that question is grab whichever one's cheapest because I feel like they all have the same upside as well as floor.
No, I love that answer, man. It's just it's a complicated backfield. Maybe you want a little piece of this backfield, but like you said, I'm not investing too much in it because it seems like they're all going to have their role any given week.
Yeah.
Should I trade more in JCM for Benson? As bad as this sounds on paper, I don't think it's the end of the world. It's just a lot to give up for Trey Benson. It would be like, would I trade DJ Moore and JCM for James Conner? And I think for me, it's a slight overpay just in case something does happen with DJ Moore and something else happens, or in case Krosky-Merritt takes over more of the backfield. Right now, I think it's a little too much, but if I was 0-3, I might make this deal.
I don't even think if I was 0-3, I think that I would still make that deal because I think Benson's going to be solid. I think Benson's going to be solid and consistent more so than the other two. And when you're looking to build a team, that's what you're looking for because DJ Moore is not going to have as much consistency as his name leads off to be. And Bill,
Yeah.
and yeah, so I would make that deal.
The only thing is, to me, it seems like those two could be similar, except Benson catches the ball a little bit more. I don't know. It ain't really. I feel like that trade, that's a meh. That's a meh trade anyway. What about Jackson Dart? Is he worth stashing? Obviously, was named the starter. Russell Wilson. We see him struggle a little bit. Jackson Dart, a lot of promise during this offseason. I think he's worth a stash in super flex leagues. In your single QB leagues, I'm not really looking at him. P, you see it any different?
Yeah, no, the same way. In single QB leagues, there's probably going to be a lot more or quarterbacks out there that I would prioritize from. Only in super flex leagues and two quarterback leagues is where I'm grabbing
I,
them.
I mean, they had him using his legs though. It's kind of, they got him looking like Daniel Jones over there.
Well, they got rid of Daniel Jones just to get Daniel Jones Jr. I mean, who knows?
With Dart, the last name, though, you already know. What about Tyquan Thornton? And I dropped this
Yeah.
name on this show before, and we're
Yep.
seeing it. I like Tyquan Thornton, and the reason why he's on this list is because I don't think it's like there's no longevity here. At some point, Worthy's back. At some point, Rashee Rice is back.
Yeah.
He has a role as the deep guy. I think it's just a very tough player to start consistently.
Yeah, and when you think about that, those players coming back, and then when you ask what's his role, well, Juju also has a role there, and it seems like Juju's coming through for them on third downs quite frequently. So, it's limited. It's limited, but by week 7, he's going to be worthless. So,
All right, rapid fire, real quick on a few more. What about dropping Jerry Judy for Tucker or Burden? I think that's a little too aggressive. I would keep Jerry Judy. What do
yeah.
you do with Ridley P?
I'd keep Ridley, keeping
Keep
it
him?
quick for the sake of keeping it quick. He's had at least 7 targets in each of his 3 games. They're going to click soon.
Yeah, that's a tough hold right now. Would you trade Neighbors? I'm not trading Malik Neighbors.
No, you trade
Not
four
trade.
neighbors.
Yeah, trade for Neighbors. Panic with Drake London. I think the same thing with him. I think that offense will get better. Where you with Drake London?
I mean, no, there's a lot of wide receivers that people are panicking on. He's one that you shouldn't. Although I get it, but no, you keep him, and if you don't have him, you try and trade for him.
We just saw what happened with AJ Brown. They'll bounce back. Brian Thomas, Neighbors, Drake London. Don't panic too much. Would
Yeah.
y'all trade Bijan for Amon-Ra St. Brown? You had your receivers go down, Mike and CD, and you got Jacobson, Achane. I think that's a little heavy still, bro. But
With that, you have Achan, you have Jacobs. I would, I would ask for something else in return, like a little something on the back end to make it easy, and go get Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Well, listen, guys, I know a lot of questions here, and this is a time period where we got to start stacking up wins. So, one way you could do that is by listening to our waiver wire pickups here. We had Trey Benson at running back, Sterling Shepard at wide receiver, Trey Tucker at wide receiver, Luther Burden at wide receiver, Torrey Horton for the Seahawks, and then Ollie Gordon for the Dolphins. Horton and Gordon for those deeper leagues there. P, any final advice heading into waiver pickups tonight? Obviously, a lot of names there, some questionable players that you're going to be looking to trade or drop. Any advice for those watching right now?
Yeah, look, Fab Bucks, you have them, and I mentioned this early on the show. You have them for big splashes. When you see a potential RB2 out there, I would invest heavy for him. But outside of that, there's a lot of players that are kind of like in the same realm, in the same round. So if you're not spending on Benson, then I would let the waivers clear and then scoop up who's left.
Yeah, especially when you got your Tyquan Thornton out there and Trey Tucker and Luther Bird. And it's like a
Yeah,
lot of kind of fringe. Jalen Tolbert could be a name that somebody says. It's just
yeah.
there's a lot of fringe receivers out there. So hopefully you guys learned something here on the show. Good luck on your waivers tonight for Prabhat Parmar and myself, Justin Henry. We'll see you guys on the next Waiver Wire episode right here on Bleacher Report.